I think I'm going to read you a few bedtime stories, if that's okay. But I thought maybe I'd say a few words, and then maybe we'll do a little Q&A before, after the reading, if that's It's Sunday night. Does anybody have to be anywhere? There's always a lot going on here in Miami, though. You know, it's not like you're in Flint, right? And thank you to the one person who applauded for Flint during the introduction. Well, there you are, right there. Thank you. Our diaspora is far and wide. I mean, we're laughing, but when I made Roger and Me, it was really just about Flint. Maybe a few steel towns in Pennsylvania, a couple mill towns on the East Coast, but that was it, really. And now, the rest of the country, in many places, looks like Flint, Michigan. So, I'm just going to take a sip of water. Thank you for that. But I got here a couple of hours ago, and I remember that the last official haircut that I had was here in Miami. And so I was trying to find a place that was open on a Sunday so I could get another haircut, which I indeed did get. I know you're thinking, where's the haircut? But no, this is a very nice woman, this place here in downtown Miami, young African-American woman, telling me how she grew up in actually an army base in Germany. Her dad was in the army. Then they moved to Georgia when he retired. And living in Georgia, she thought Miami was the place to be, where she would make it. And I said, so how's that going? You know, because it's a really exciting place here. There's no place in America like Miami. And she said, the people are great, and there's lots to do, but it's very hard to live here. It's hard. It's a struggle to survive and to get by. She said, I read a statistic in the paper the other day here that said that those who actually can afford the Miami lifestyle as we know it in films and television and what we think of Miami, which is about 3% of the people can actually fully afford that and never have to worry about looking at their bank account. And everybody else figures out a way to make ends meet, or in my generation's case, we just keep racking up the credit card debt on top of the student loan debt. And I thought about that, and I thought just 3%, that sounds awfully, awfully low. But then I remember just a couple of days ago in the New York Times, where they had been doing an investigation for some months and got the Census Bureau to admit what the true poverty figures actually are in this country. I don't know if you saw this story a few days ago. It was really shocking. 1 out of 3 Americans, that's 100 million Americans, either live in poverty or just above poverty, where they're like a month away. At any given time in their lives, they could be in poverty in a month if anything happened, a catastrophic illness or loss of a job or whatever. 100 million of our fellow Americans have to not only figure out a way to survive, but live with this sense of fear, constant fear, and having to take up much of their daily existence just trying to figure out, how am I going to make ends meet? How am I going to pay the rent this month? How am I going to afford the mortgage this month? And it almost seems like an evil genius plot, where those in charge, those in power, figured out the way to keep people from being politically active, from actually, upending this rotten deal that they've received, is to make their lives just as miserable as possible. So they really don't have the time, because they're working 1 job or 2 jobs, or if they're single parents, they've got kids that they're trying to take care of. Maybe they're taking care of the neighbor's kids because the neighbor person has a second job at night, on and on and on. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I've been very active in the Occupy Wall Street movement. And to write down, to actually come up with the goals of the those of you who are more disciplined and organized, I know, yes, this has to happen. But let me just say something about the kids being all right. The young people who are really the motor, the engine in this movement. I mean, thank God for this next generation. They know that they've been screwed. They know that those of us who are my age, who in the baby boom generation, we got to have a better life than our parents had. And yet, we're not passing that on so that our kids have a better life than we have. And they know that. And they know that it's a bit of a raw deal. Not only that, they're going to have to pay off our debts for these 2 unnecessary wars and everything else. But these kids, I know it looks like, you know, they're beating on their drums and their bongos and they're, you know, they're full of life, they're camping out in tents and they're doing this and that, whatever. But remember, any movement that begins has to begin with those who are willing to take risks. And they're immediately ridiculed for, look how crazy or goofy they look or how they sound or whatever. But all the great movements start that way, right? Somebody had to burn the first bra. That individual was ridiculed. Somebody had to burn the first draft card. Somebody had to be the person to not get up off the seat in the bus and move to the back. That doesn't seem really strange. I mean, when you think about it, just the women's movement, which really started in the 1840s with the suffragette movement. Imagine if you've read anything about it, how they were ridiculed, how they were tortured, put in jail. Husbands divorced them. Nobody would marry them. They were weirdos. You think women should vote? That just seemed like, that would just be like asking me to stand on my head right now. I mean, this is the weirdest thing if I suddenly did that. That's how weird it would seem to anybody back then, and they knew they had such a mountain to get over because they knew that to get the constitutional amendment passed, no woman would be able to vote on that amendment. So they had to get something passed that not one single one of them could have a say in. I mean, just think about that, right? And yet they were able to accomplish this. Sometimes we start to feel, you know, a bit down, depressed about, you know, geez, you know, the right wing, this country's taking over, this corporate America, all these fat cats have all this money, and it's all true, you know, they buy the politicians. The 400 wealthiest Americans have more combined wealth than 150 million Americans combined. 400. I mean, how can we really call ourselves a democracy, an egalitarian society where we try to have some sense of fairness and everybody gets to participate, have a say, when 400 have more than 150 million? Isn't democracy supposed to be like this big table, and everybody gets to have a seat at the table? Doesn't mean it's necessarily an equal seat. Some people get bigger chairs, people cushion on the bigger chair, but everybody gets a chair at the table, right? And if there's a big pie on the table, our goal is to try to divide that pie up fairly. It's probably impossible to carve it up so everybody gets an equal slice. But we can make sure that everybody gets a slice and gets a fair slice of that pie, right? Well, that's not the America that we live in now. And we're hanging on, I think, to what's left of our democracy by just a few threads. And unless we all get involved, unless we get up out of our seats and become part of this movement right now, Occupy Wall Street is not about going down and sleeping in a tent in front of the federal building or wherever they are here in Miami. It's about you deciding what you can do to try and stop the inequity, the horrible, tragic inequity that exists in our country right now. And there is something that each and every one of us can do. And I think that, so I was on this goals committee yesterday, and we're going to put some things out there that everybody can do. And eventually we will have this list of demands of what we want changed. I can tell you a few of the things that I'd like to see happen right now. Number one, reinstate Glass-Steagall. Put the regulations back on Wall Street. Put the regulations back on the bank. Number two, get the money out of politics. Remove money from politics. Gotta go. Number three, remove the Bush tax cuts for the rich. Gotta go. Number four, in order to have Social Security money available until 2075, all we have to do is make those who earn over $110,000 a year pay the same flat tax all the other schmucks who make $20,000 and $30,000 and $40,000 a year have to pay 7% of their income to Social Security, and the rich don't. Make the rich pay just what everybody else pays, and we've got money till 2075. These are not hard things to do. We can do this. And you know what's great about this movement is it already has the vast support of the public. I saw one poll, a National Journal poll, 59% of the American public says that they agree with the goals of the Occupy Wall Street movement. 59%. The movement's only 9 weeks old. I don't know of any movement in its 9th week that had, those of you who are my age or older, the feminist movement of the 60s, did we have 59% of the country behind us in the first 9 weeks? Did Martin Luther King have 59% of the country behind him in 1955? No! 1965, the anti-war movement as it was just beginning. 59% of America with us on that? No! Already this movement has the vast majority of Americans believing, yes, we have to do something about this inequality, about this inequity. That's an amazing accomplishment. As much as they put down or ridicule the encampments or whatever, it has already had some important victories. Number one, they've changed the national debate. 9 weeks ago, what were we talking about? The debt ceiling. When's the last time you heard somebody talk about the debt ceiling? You know, that's what we were talking about at the beginning of September. Now we're talking about the things we should be talking about. Jobs, taxes, student loans, all these things that weren't being mentioned, and they're the things that really affect people in their daily lives. So this is incredible that this is happening. And I think it's a moment for all of us to take advantage of right now, because I want to just let you in on a secret here. You live in a liberal country. America, the United States of America, is a liberal country. It is a center-left country, not a right country, not a center-right country. It is a liberal country. Now, I'm looking at you. You can't see how you look right now. And I know you're thinking, Mike, you're breathing the air of Miami-Dade Community College. You know, yes, it looks liberal here, but you haven't been to a college. Well, let me tell you about Ocala. Because this is where we're wrong. And this is where we need to change our thinking about this. We live in a liberal country. Alright? All the polls show on just about every issue, other than maybe the death penalty, the majority of our fellow Americans agree with the liberal position on the issues. Over 60% now are opposed to these wars that Bush got us into. 80% supported us going in. 60% now are opposed to these wars. That's incredible. 85% of Americans want stronger environmental laws, not weaker ones. Stronger environmental laws. Over 80% of our fellow Americans believe women should be paid the same as men. 72% believe taxes should be raised on the rich. 72%. That's the liberal position. And for the first time ever in September, the polls that were taken, 54% in one poll, showed that a majority of our fellow Americans believe that gay marriage should be the law of the entire land. 54%. That's the America you live in. That's your America. You live in a liberal country. Your fellow Americans are very, very liberal on these issues. They don't like to call themselves liberals because we help to make that a dirty word. Liberals help to make that a dirty word by disowning it, by not using it anymore, right? Ran away from it. Republicans went, boo, liberal. No, I'm not a liberal. I'm not a liberal. You know, I was like, you can hear the cock crowing 3 times. Every time Peter, I'm not a liberal. Sorry, I was a little adverse there. I'll have more on that later. But it's true.